Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I know that sticks in a lot of people's craw. I know it. I get it. I am actually thinking along the lines of what we've seen. People don't like to show up as much in the losses. You know what? Renny may actually be, this is one of those receipts that may work against me in this situation. If anyone's been watching this show, they know that my take on this Winnipeg Jets team, the fans and the whole situation with the fans in the stands. And I do love, by the way, that someone gave Kenny and Renny the credit for one of the sellouts, because we had a conversation and said, look, if you can get there, get back into the building. If it's worries about, good hockey being played, get back into the building. So I appreciated the credit, and the weight that you think that Kenny and I carry in getting people back into the building. But I've said this before, I don't think the Winnipeg market is a market that requires a winner to fill that building. I think it's a dangerous premise to suggest that that's the case, because as good as Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff have been at keeping a playoff lineup in Winnipeg for as long as they have done so, at some point a team is going to flag. At some point they're going to fall. At some point there's going to be a rebuild. And if the suggestion is that Winnipeg Jets fans can't fill the building when that happens, then you're talking about an organization being in trouble. I've fought against that idea. I've tried to give Winnipeggers credit and Winnipeg Jets fans credit where it's due. But I'll say this, our numbers after losses are sometimes half on YouTube what they are when there's a win. So no doubt, are we seeing it on the Kenny and Renny show? And I think you would say that for the other sports podcasts in this market. Jets fans aren't showing up for these shows after losses as well. So I'm not ready to not go to bat for the fan base and say that the Winnipeg Jets fans only like a winner. But boy, oh boy, we're feeling a little bit of the pinch on nights like tonight, and you can see it in the chat room numbers right there. That said, really do appreciate everyone who showed up and who keeps showing up through all of these situations here. Let's get to the game. I take a look at this situation and what I see. And again, I'm going to do the glass half full, glass half empty. So Elliot Friedman at the end of the game had talked about the Jets and said there's a lot to take away from that game. You've got a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs who have so many offensive weapons, and the Jets kept it 0-0 until 3-3, which everyone knows my opinion is an artificial scenario. To me, the Jets either come with 2 points, walk away with 1 point. I know it sucks if you're not getting that point, but to me, this is not what happens in the playoffs, right? Scott Billick was just texting with me, and he'd said he thought that the Jets dominated the Toronto Maple Leafs at 5-on-5. I too thought they were the better 5-on-5 team. I think that means inexorably, if not in that game, but over a 7-game series, which is the standard I think that you try to compare it to, that the Jets win that game. Just the number of mistakes that they forced from the Toronto Maple Leafs in that first period, you got to expect more of those are going to end up in the back of the net. And yes, I'm trotting out the excuse machine, which I don't like doing, and sometimes it drives me nuts when people see it happening time and again. But I do think without Gabe Vilardi and Mark Scheifele in the lineup, when you've got your leading scorer and your hottest scorer over the last little while, when Kyle Connor, yes, is back, but clearly has not hit his stride yet, you're taking a massive chunk of the Jets offense. But I will say this, the idea of the Jets rolling 4 lines and consistently getting goals from everybody, clearly the Jets numbers showed that they were, probably above the mean. They were probably getting a few more goals than they were expected to get. High shooting percentages and all. Looks like the Jets are regressing towards the mean, or in a little bit of a low period right now. A lot of ways to look at it. But if the Jets have Mark Scheifele, maybe this is a different game. If they have Gabe Vilardi, a different game. But they didn't. And that's where we're going to go down. We got to touch on Josh Morrissey, obviously, Lauren Brossoit, all these different kind of things. But to me, scoring woes are most definitely an issue. I believe it was 9 goals in their last 6 games. You're not going to, at the beginning of the year, Rick Bowness had said, we're not going to win a lot of games if we keep allowing 5 goals. Well, it's pretty hard to win a lot of games if all you're scoring is 1.5 goals per game. That's a tricky situation to try and get into. So the Jets get right back to the defensive brand of hockey. I'll say this. I thought that the Jets did that same thing that they've been doing this year, which I think is a real reason to, kind of stand behind this Winnipeg Jets team in belief. The idea that even when they don't have their fastball, which I don't think they had on this night, they fall back into their structure, and their structure makes them a really, really, really tough team to beat. I thought they played the structure well tonight. I think that structure is their strength, and we've seen it time and time again with the loss of guys like Mark Scheifele, with the loss of guys like Kyle Connor, although we'll get into it. But the loss, to me, of Mark Scheifele compared to the loss of Kyle Connor is clearly a bigger deal for this team and harder to cover off. We'll get into that conversation. I think it's fairly obvious. But what you see tonight is the highest minute muncher on the Winnipeg Jets, and Josh Morrissey injured and leaves the game. And what you get is a team that still manages to go into overtime 0-0 against a high octane team like that. Take Josh Morrissey, one of the best defenders on the Winnipeg Jets, one of the biggest minute munchers on the Winnipeg Jets, and everybody else just steps up, and it's not a problem. It is not a problem for this team to not allow goals, no matter who is taken out of the lineup. The likes of Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Dominic Toninato and Gus in the past, and Rasmus Kupari coming back in. This team knows who it is, knows what its identity is, and falls back on their identity. This is ironclad and sound. It remains that way. The system is the system. The Jets fall back into it, and it's why they are given an opportunity to win on every night, even when they lose 4-1 to the Boston Bruins. But that's a 2-1 game going down to about 5 minutes left in the game. However, I will say this. You take a look now, and the Jets have won. They've earned about 5 of their last 10 points. You go back 6 games, and let's take a look at what the Jets' last 6 games. Let's go back 6 games and say 2-1 over the Blackhawks. Not a lot of offense, and they pull off a little bit of a miracle late game comeback against the bottom place team in the league. Not exactly resounding game, but they pull out a victory. Everyone wanted to talk and say, oh, this is a good thing. The Jets are, pulling it out. They're making it happen. That's a gritty win, however you want to say it. Well, or else it's a team that was supposed to at the time be the best team in the league, playing the worst team in the league and pulling out a miracle comeback. Next game, they lose 2-0 against the Flyers. Can't score. The next game, 4-2 against the Islanders. I still can't comment on that game. That was when I was on the plane. But if Ken Wiebe is telling me that I wouldn't have liked the game and he thought it was a little bit of a Jets getting a better fate game than they deserved, then if Ken's saying it, no doubt I'm taking that to the bank. That was the situation. Then we've got against the Senators, a 2-1 overtime win, a 4-1 loss to the Boston Bruins, and now a 1-0 loss to the Jets. Goals are not coming easy for the Winnipeg Jets. They've only got 2 goals in their last 3 games in regulation time. This is something that we had talked about, and what I had said down the stretch was, to me, the effort for the Winnipeg Jets. They're falling in their structure. They're playing their structure, but that push that we saw from this team is not there anymore. Now, I thought we saw it in the first period of this game. I thought it dwindled in the second period. I thought it dwindled in the third period, although I thought that was a fairly even played period. But what we are not seeing is that Winnipeg Jets team that just owns huge swaths of the second and third period, won't let the team out of their zone, just grinds them into oblivion. We're not seeing that. We didn't see it against the Boston Bruins, who outground the Winnipeg Jets in that game. I think I gave the pristine wake-up call to the Winnipeg Jets in that game to say it's time to start getting going again. This is the middle of the season grind, and I'm trying to figure out if what we're seeing from the Winnipeg Jets is the idea that maybe they're getting a little bit tired. I think they looked a little bit tired today, but sometimes tired is just an excuse for a lack of effort. Maybe the Jets aren't giving the same effort. Maybe they realized that going and throwing everything you have at the schedule in January really doesn't win you the Stanley Cup, and they've put themselves in a position where they've got a comfortable little bit of a lead, and so they're able to kind of play with things a little bit, win some games against lesser opposition like they did for a long stretch without putting that much effort in. Is it catching up to them now? I think that's potentially what we're seeing. I think the other thing you need to be concerned with is I talked about that stretch of 12 games the Jets had, and of those 12 games, 10 had come against teams below the playoff line. Well, 7 of those games against the 10 teams below the playoff line were the 6 bottom place teams in the NHL. Now the Jets are starting to run into playoff competition. And what's happening when they run into playoff competition? Well, they lost to the Philadelphia Flyers, they lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they lose to the Boston Bruins. So if you want to look at it from that perspective, the Jets have now lost 3 straight games against playoff teams over the playoff line. That's something that I think what we are clearly seeing is when we are talking about the Jets just getting by the Chicago Blackhawks, or maybe not having that effort and just getting by. They had an empty netter, but just getting by the New York Islanders, who were lost at the time and had to change their coach. Well, now what it's turned into is when they're playing this below the NHL playoff line teams and they're just getting by them. Well, now the teams that are over the playoff line are just getting by the Winnipeg Jets. It's my contention the Jets need to start picking up their level of play if they are going to continue doing this. They got one more game to do it. Maybe what we're seeing right now is a team that went on an absolute heater and got a little bit tired and need a break. And if that's the case, they got one more game to go before they get there. And then we can kind of wipe the excuse board clean here and say the Jets have had their rest. What we need to see the Winnipeg Jets become when they come back after the break is that team that we saw before, or we have to start looking at the idea that, yes, their defensive structure in their zone is still really good, but what we're not seeing is them dominating teams on the forecheck the way they used to. I look at it and I think it's an effort thing now, but if they can't start correcting that in the next game or the games coming up after the break and doing it a little more consistently, then I think you have to start looking into the idea that opposing teams have dug into the Winnipeg Jets forecheck and are finding ways to solve it, because that first period was an example of the Winnipeg Jets forecheck absolutely forcing turnovers left, right, and center. Although I will say someone had talked about it earlier on here and suggested that the Toronto Maple Leafs looked like an average NHL team. I thought they were being ridiculously cavalier and careless with the puck in that first period. But what I saw was a team that in the second and third period didn't get caught in its end very often, seemed to find a way to pass the puck out of the zone and really take away the effectiveness of the Winnipeg Jets forecheck. That's their bread and butter when it comes to scoring. If they can't get the forecheck going and have those shifts where they're dominating and holding a team in, that's how the Winnipeg Jets score. So the fact that the forecheck is not as dominant as it has been, the fact that the forecheck is not going the way we've seen it in the past is a pretty good indicator of why this team can't seem to score right now. I would love to cue Ken up in this situation. Believe me, as much as I love hearing the sound of my own voice, it would be nice to hear the sounds of Ken's at this stage, but he's not here yet. Nobody in the green room. So I'm going to move on to another conversation here. Let's just dig into Josh Morrissey just a little bit here. Takes that shot in the midsection. That's a weird one. I mean, that's a really, really strange one at that stage, one that keeps him out of the game. The one thing that I was thinking, and this, believe me, is pure speculation. Do not take this with anything but a grain of salt. The worst case scenario I think of in a situation like that is if you take a puck and it's in one of those tender spots as a guy who has had hernia surgery. If you take that puck and it happens to do some tearing of the stomach muscles in that area there, boy, oh boy, that can be a problem. That is agonizing pain. I believe if you go back to 2015, it was Andrew Ladd who got through the playoffs that year with a sports hernia. Sounded like it was agony, but I think that was something, if I remember correctly, that happened towards the end of the year. And it was one of these, well, let's see how long we can go in the playoffs and put up with this. I don't think it's something that you would want to have a player try and play the entire season through. So if it is something like that, everybody knock on woods, take their hat off and give their head a knock when it comes to Josh Morrissey, because that would be a tough situation. I'm trying to think of anything else that would keep you out in that situation, because Josh Morrissey is a guy, clearly you saw him take that puck in the face. He's still got the bruising on his face from that situation. He's got the scar to prove what happened in that situation. This is not a guy who's going to allow pain to keep him out of the lineup. It's functionality keeping him out of the lineup at this stage. So if you're taking a look at the Josh Morrissey loss, that's a big one. But I put Josh Morrissey in the category of Kyle Connor, in that when Kyle Connor went down, I'd said, I foresee the team surviving this. And I don't know that I said that they'd thrive, but I foresaw them being able to get by, because I thought and still believe the secret sauce of this team is the system and how it plays the system. We saw the continuation of that tonight, but where I did think that Josh Morrissey was solely missed was on those 2 late power plays in overtime, where he's able to, kind of just command the puck, command the pace of play, the level of play, possession of the puck. I thought they missed Josh Morrissey a lot in that situation. And I'll tell you this, if the Jets have scoring woes of the guys they could lose right now, outside of, let's add Kyle Connor in there, the guys they could lose, the top 4 most important players on this team when it comes to producing points, I would have Mark Scheifele first, Kyle Connor when he is going second, Josh Morrissey third, but threatening for second right there in that situation. So this is a loss that would suggest that the Winnipeg Jets' woes when it comes to scoring maybe just beginning if you don't get a player like that back into your lineup. Laurent Brossoit. Okay, let's get into this one. And I'm just gonna have to just get into a conversation right now that I would have loved to have had Ken here. But you know what, Ken, I wanted to do this because Ken is the guy that pulled this off a little while ago. He always likes to say, well, the numbers don't lie. Like that's a checkmate in this conversation or something like that. He brought up the numbers of Connor Hellebuck going down the last stretch. I thought this was interesting because I've said this in the past. I think Elliot Friedman is leading the national level. And you know what? Ken's here. So he can get into this thing before I get too deep into this. So he's going to have to hurry up right now. We're also going to have Jeff Hamilton. I hate to ruin the surprise, but we're going to bring him on. I got to send him an invite as well. But Kenny, get ready. I hope you're listening because I'm about to bring you into the show here, big guy. He gave me the thumbs up. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Other than my dog, Ken, there may not be any being in this world that is more in love with my voice than I am. But hey, 17 minutes and 42 seconds. That's a long time to leave a bro hanging. But hey, you know what? I know you got work to do. So let's just get right into it quick. You look like $1 million as you always do. Good job repping Vittorio Rossi and Frankie and the boys out in Toronto, showing the big city slickers how a small town guy can still look like $1 million. You want to look like Kenny, head on down. Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Walk in, tell him Kenny and Renny. Ask for Frankie and the boys, they will do you up right. And good to see you launch into it, my man. We'll just
Yeah, a fun game on a lot of fronts, buddy. Jets played well in the game. They were, hang on a second here, sorry. Dominant first period. Special teams obviously were the name of the game in the second. Pretty good in the third. Oh. All right, we're gonna get it together here eventually. Sorry about that, buddy. Sorry.
You've done it.
Except I'm on top of my computer bag here. Yeah, buddy. Jets, very good. Laurent Brossoit, excellent. The leading goal scorer in the NHL got loose for 2 seconds in a game where he was otherwise invisible, and the Jets lost 1-0. I mean, there was a lot to like from their game. Their penalty kill was exceptional. Goaltending very good. Defense unbelievable after a injury to Josh Morrissey that certainly will be worth noting here in the next little while, right? I mean, Rick Bowness had very limited updates. He's their best defenseman, and if they miss him for any length of time, it's a big ask for the rest of the defense corps. It'll be interesting to see what the Jets decide to do, whether you're calling Logan Stanley or Declan Chisholm out of the bullpen, or if after 5 games with the Moose, Ville Heinola is deemed to be ready after missing months with that ankle injury. I personally think he needs a little bit longer, and I wouldn't recall him before the All-Star break. Let him play some more games, but if Josh is going to be out and they want a puck-moving defenseman, the only issue with my theory, Sean, is that I think Logan Stanley hasn't played since December 12th, and Declan Chisholm hasn't played since December 4th, so even though Heinola may not be fully into NHL speed after 5 American Hockey League games, the other 2 guys haven't played in over a month, so even though they've been skating daily. So they got a big choice there if that's the case. And again, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the Jets are going to be off tomorrow. We're not going to get an update before Friday. So, I mean, those are the 3 options they have to consider. I would say Jets top line didn't really have enough going personally during the game itself. In overtime, Nikolai Ehlers had a great shot. I don't know about if you could see it on TV, Sean, but I thought that this is the most frustrated I've seen Kyle Connor in a game in quite some time. Banged his stick on the way to the bench on multiple occasions. Wasn't handling the puck the way that we're used to. I mean, his legs are getting back up to speed, but he wasn't really handling the puck the way that we're used to seeing him play. And in a game where the Jets didn't have any offense, I mean, their top guns didn't get a whole lot done, and neither, I mean, again, Samsonov played great, don't get me wrong. Inability to bear down on a 2-on-0 rush was costly also, but they got some movement going on the power play. Kyle Connor did have a nice one-timer chance, but overall, the Jets were much better, Sean. This is their best game of the road trip in the eyes of Rick Bowness, and I have to say that I agree. At the end of the day, gutting out a 1 point out of this one to make it a 3 out of 6 for the road trip, I would say is a solid showing for a team that had been wobbling a little bit going into it.
Let's get right into this because I'm going to touch off the stuff. I had to go a little bit outside of what I would usually cover in the game, and I had talked about Josh Morrissey. I know you touched on it a little bit there. Speculate, if you will, with your doctorate well, we've all got doctorates in BS in this business here, but speculate a little bit on what you're seeing there, what you think possibly could have been a situation like that kept Josh Morrissey.
Yeah, I mean, it was the result of the blocked shot from Matthew Nyes in the first period, late in the first period, and it looked like it got him in an area that is generally covered by a jock. I don't know that for certain. And again, I don't want to speculate on something like this. We know what happened to Blake Wheeler. We know it kept him out of the lineup for a little bit of time. It was, something that was very serious. So I don't know the severity of this for Josh. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be something that keeps him out a little while, or if it's something that can be taken care of during the All-Star break. Is there an outside chance he could play Saturday? Yes, but I would highly doubt it. But let's see what the next couple of days bring here. But I do think it was shot in an uncomfortable area below the belt. So that's something that is, again, it could be scary, it could be nothing. I don't know. But he definitely, what I would say that was different, again, everything is different and you never know what happens. But when this happened to Blake Wheeler, he went down in excruciating pain, and basically had to be helped off. When this happened to Josh, he hustled on his way to the bench and ran down the tunnel. So I don't know if there's a correlation there or not, but I do think that it's something that, certainly if you've been hit there, you know what it feels like, and it all depends on how it hit or what it hit and the severity we'll see in the next couple days.
No doubt. Okay, not going to waste any time because we're already 25 minutes in the show. Time to bring in man with second best music in the business. I don't know. It rocks one way or another. Time to bring down the hammer. There we go. Good to see you, Hammy.
Welcome.
Might as well jump onto the buffet here. We're trying to roll our way through this. What are you seeing from that game? I know Rick Bowness liked what he saw there. I think he's got a crew that he thinks is a little bit tired and a little bit beaten up, and he's like giving them flowers for what they've been doing here. I'm wondering how much the maybe the domination of the Winnipeg Jets that we saw before Christmas, and maybe to a degree coming out of Christmas, I think has slowed over the last number of games. I went over their last 6 games and went over each one and took a look and thought, like, it's been a while since we've seen that team that, fed it to the Detroit Red Wings, that gave it to the Boston Bruins that first time around. What's that, Ken?
Shots were 16-4 on the first, Sean. Toronto barely touched the puck.
Yeah, I addressed that in the opening.
Okay, sorry. Well, you just said you hadn't seen them play a dominant style for a while. I mean, the first period was all Jets until the 3 minors, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay,
but
sorry.
I mean, yeah, I'm not. But I'm talking about a Winnipeg Jets team that dominates for an entire game, right? The Jets team that just basically. Okay. We had a lot of conversations here where we talked about the Jets and said, boy, oh boy, there's no such thing as a 60-minute game. But if the Jets are getting as close as you can get to it over and over and over again, we definitely didn't see that tonight. Yeah, they went up 16-4 in shots, and it ended up being an even game. So they took the first and then gave up the second, and then basically. Anyways, Jeff, what are you seeing from this team? Are you of Bones' mind that this is a team that, doing what it needs to do right now, or are we seeing something over the course of maybe the cause of injuries or tiredness or whatever's happening with this team that is we're getting the results that we're getting over the last little while?
Yeah, my first observation is clearly Kenny didn't get the memo about the skater boy outfits tonight, but you're looking great.
Good lid on the 18 over par, by the way. Nice touch there.
Yeah, I realize I haven't even plugged in my my headphones here, but my observation in this game is, Sean, is I think it's somewhere in between that. I think if you would have looked at this game, you would have seen. I don't know if anybody would have expected 1 point being a bad outcome, and so I mean. But the crazy part about that is I don't think there's a lot of people in the Jets room right now that feel all that good about the 1 point, because they had a real shot at 2 points in a game where they didn't have Mark Scheifele, they didn't have Velarde, they lost Josh Morrissey at the end of the first period, and so it was a really gutsy effort to the point where they put themselves in prime position. I thought when they got that late power play, that was game over. That was going to be the one thing that cured all, right? Gave the power play the jam that they needed and gave them a victory over a Leafs team that we know from the past, even though Mark Scheifele wasn't in their lineup today, that they love to beat. So I thought, the first period, I'm with Kenny, I'm with Bones in the sense that they dominated that period, and then they were the better team in the second period, but the penalties threw them off. And then the third period, there was an inevitable push from the Leafs, who must have been a frustrated group. I'd wonder what Sheldon Keefe said to them at the break after benching, Mitch Marner, Nylander, and Matthews from the first power play unit, right? I mean, that was the storyline on Sportsnet post game was, are you okay with being benched, right? Because every time we see a player get benched or a high level player get benched, it's code red time. So I thought, all things considered, it's a disappointing result, but I certainly can't get. I don't think I can be too judgmental on the effort tonight.
You know what? The one thing I've got to take away quickly, just about that Leafs game tonight, and I don't want to dig too deep into that because I know that'll just drive people crazy. But like, can this team get through a game without drama? You know what I mean? The one thing I'll say about the Winnipeg Jets is time and time again, they just show up, they take care of their business, they fall into their structure, they make it hard to score on. And then on the other end of the ice, you've got this team that's always up or it's always down, and their stars are getting benched. And Sheldon Keefe looks like he's losing his mind on his bench. And online, the media and the fans are going nuts about how hot the seat is. Like, in the end, it's funny. You take a look at this game and you walk away, and I will say this. If you're the Jets, you walk away from this and maybe you didn't get those points. And I do think you guys are underselling where the Jets' game has been over the last series of games. But I'll say this. You walk away from a game like that, and Rick Bowness gets to walk away and say, yeah, we allowed 4 last game. We've come right back to allowing 0 goals in regulation. Our 5-on-5 numbers are absolutely great. We took and turned our penalty kill around. Whereas the Leafs, on the other hand, squeak out a 1-0 victory against a team that's got 3 injured stars out of its lineup, and do so in this dramatic fashion where it looks like there's, fires are constantly putting them out. What drama always exists in the center of the hockey universe in Toronto, and how nice is it to be a team like the Jets that really don't have the drama? They just quietly go around their business and do that business in a very, very repeatable way, Ken.
Yeah, sorry, and just a quick one for Robert Starr. I mean, again, and sometimes I don't want to oversell the numbers, but the high danger chances at 5-on-5 were 9-2 for the Jets. So I don't agree that they were all from the outside. So and 2 of those are on a 2-on-0. And I'm not underselling or overselling, Sean. In the building, the Jets were terrible in Boston, super slow. Today they were the total opposite. They were on top of the Leafs, above the puck, attacking, and then they got into a situation where they had no flow in the second period. But, I don't know. I'm not saying this was peak Jets, but it was sure a hell of a lot better than Monday in Boston. That's all my point was there. But at the same time, one of the issues that we're noticing, Sean, where's the offense? That's 1 goal in 2 games now, and it was hard against Ottawa. Korpisalo was very good. So Ezzy put up a tweet before. Now it's 12 in a row for Niederreiter, 10 in a row for Iafallo. I didn't particularly like the game from Ehlers or Kyle Connor. So I'm not overselling the fact that the Jets are a big juggernaut blowing teams out of the water, but I would say their first period was a massive response to how sluggish they were in the first 2 periods on Monday. What that translates into, I don't know. What I was impressed by Laurent Brossoit. Guy hasn't played since January 11th, and he was very good. I mean,
I guess I'm just saying, like, if you dominate a team in the first period, I'm with you, right? That's a great response. But if you give it all back in the second, if you're looking at this globally from a game, how can you really take that much away from it?
But they gave up almost nothing. Matthews was a non-factor until 48 seconds left in the game, and he just had 1 tip.
4, and then everything's balanced out by the second period. One team owned 1 period, one owned the next period.
Right, but 10 shots were on the power play, Sean. They gave up nothing in the game against this high juggernaut offense. So that is the Jets. They're stifling defensively, but they're missing an offense. You don't agree?
No, well, I guess what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about their structure. I said time and time again their structure is there, but the push came from the Leafs. I'm not talking about the shots given up. I thought that the Leafs pushed more in the second and third period coming out of that. So the Jets pushed in the first. I agree with you 100%, but I'm not willing to say, well, they came out and they weren't there against Boston. They blew the Toronto Maple Leafs out of the building in the first period, and then they ended up giving it all back in the second period. And then like what I'm missing from this Jets team right now is that team that churns and takes the puck to the offensive zone and grinds it down and wears their opponents out. We didn't see that outside of the first period. And you're right, it's there, but I'm not willing to say, okay, they're back because they had a good first period and then they weren't able to replicate it in the second.
Sure, and just a quick one, Jeff, before you jump. I mean, 5 of the high danger chances were on the power play. They didn't churn because 10 of the 40 minutes were played while shorthanded, essentially. So, I don't know. I'm not as I'm not as down on the Jets as you are. I also don't think that they're back either. I don't think that, and I don't think it's possible for them to be back with Scheifele and Velarde. But they also weren't terrible. They were,
And I'm trying to. Where's the part where I said they were terrible?
I don't know. I said this was the best game of the road trip.
I think you guys might be arguing the same thing. I think you're just slowly.
I think
moving,
so.
I think you're slowly moving
I think
to the
so
middle.
too. That's
where you're
the point
about
I'm trying to
headbutt
make.
each other. And I'm just.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Go, you jump in.
When I answered your question, Sean, I didn't say I was talking particularly about this game. The expectations going into this game. If you want, you can go all the way back to the 5-0 win over Columbus. That we haven't seen that dominance, that consistent dominant style of performance for sure, but they've gone through, I'm not making excuses of it, but they've gone through injuries throughout that process. And I think we're also seeing at a time of year where other teams are a little more desperate than the Winnipeg Jets. And I find this interesting too, is because how many times did we used to talk about the past, like the Getzlaf and Perry eras where those guys knew, I'm not going to say checked out in January, but those guys didn't, go balls to the wall in January and February because they knew how grueling the season was, and more importantly, how grueling playoffs were. I think the difference with the Winnipeg Jets are they don't have season after season after season after season where they can go into where they have the muscle memory of playing kind of just good enough in these months. But that's kind of what we're seeing here. We're seeing them carve out victories at a time where, yes, teams are ramping up their game. Those teams that need to ramp up their games, that need to get back into the playoff race, it's the teams like the Winnipeg Jets who are still in a mini battle for the President's Trophy and for the lead in the West and Central. But I don't know if you need to see that, because I could see you making the argument, Sean, in 2 months now, saying that this team went balls to the wall the whole season, and now they've run out of gas at the most important part of the year.
Well, and I touched on that at the beginning. I touched on the idea that, it's funny because I don't think that I'm down on the Jets at all in this. I'm just not willing to say Winnipeg Jets are back, and that first period proves it. I think what I'm saying in this situation, I talked about off the top of this show, the Jets are right in the middle of a grind, and they look like a little bit of a tired team to me. So I think that we're seeing that. We're not seeing what we're seeing as far as like you said, it's been a while since they had that dominant. I think the last one is against the Arizona Coyotes, or that game against Columbus, where Columbus walks out of it and it's like, that's the best team in the league, guys. Get the heck out of their way. I think it's obvious that's not what we've seen for the last 6 games. And to your point, Jeff, I think you're 100% right. I think it's the grind. I think they're taking a look at this and saying that
when was the last time the Winnipeg Jets had a bullseye on them every single time they stepped on the ice? How many times?
Yeah.
When was the last? No, really though. You're playing the best team. You don't think the respect's there that you're getting better efforts. You don't think that in the past there were games where the Jets. I'm not saying we're a night off, but that the teams went into it not as sharp as against the Boston Bruins and the Colorado Avalanches. Like, I'm not saying that the Jets were a free bingo space, but I don't think they put nearly as much focus into the Winnipeg Jets as they do this season compared to previous ones.
Listen, to that point, and I've made this point before. Do I think the Boston Bruins did that last game? 1,000% they did. Do I think that the Colorado Avalanche did that when they came rolling into town in December? I think 100% they did. But do I think that every time Arizona comes rolling in, or one of those other teams do? No, I don't believe that, because I think they take a look at it and almost think that it's a scheduled loss in some situations, and they're playing the long game. Points matter for them in that situation. So you might as well save your best stuff if you're playing on a back-to-back. Save your stuff for Minnesota, because we have a better shot of beating Minnesota. So I don't buy that every single night the Winnipeg Jets, the whole league is like, stand up and play the Winnipeg Jets. Give them everything you got, fellas. Like, I think it happens with teams. I don't think it happens every.
Now they consider an auto loss against the Jets. Wow, that's high praise, man. I think you've moved.
Say that again, sorry.
I said now you've moved into that teams show up against Winnipeg and view it as a quote unquote scheduled loss.
I think a lot of those teams
are being hard on the Jets.
Jeff, if points matter and you need points and you're going to get into the playoffs by 1 point or 2, what are you going to do? You're going to start your best goaltender against the Minnesota Wild? You're going to start it against the Winnipeg Jets if you're a coach. Come on.
There you go.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
And just kind of reinforcing Hammer's point about desperation. I mean, it sounds crazy to say that about Toronto, but guys, they've lost 5 of the last 7 games. So yes, there's more urgency for the Leafs in a game like this than the Jets.
I agree.
But that didn't prevent the Jets from having a good effort today. Honestly, I thought it was a very gutsy effort considering the circumstances. Part of the problem for the Jets is that one of their most dangerous players was Rasmus Kupari, who hasn't scored a goal this year. So good for him to be noticeable, but guys, Rasmus Kupari can't be the Jets' best forward in a game where you're trying to beat a team like the Leafs.
Agreed.
I've got no disagreement with it, and I think I made the point. I think the Leafs had to be up for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I think if you look at the way that they played outside of that first period, I think that the Leafs came in here knowing they needed to right the ship. So this is one of those nights, and I would argue it's the better teams in the league that have to get up for the Winnipeg Jets. But I'm not going along with the idea that every single team comes walking into Winnipeg and says, these guys are the best. Let's have our best here.
And sorry,
Anyways,
hang on, one quick thing. Sorry, waiters. 4 losses in a row for the Leafs, a win over Calgary, a loss to the Canucks, and a win over Seattle. That's 5 out of 7, which is what I just said. 5 losses.
Okay, let's. What I want to do is I want to say that I think it really paid off for the Winnipeg Jets to go with Laurent Brossoit on this night. He's making them look good and has been for a long time now. And if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Game Green Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt-free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. And it's time to talk now about that man, Laurent Brossoit. What'd you see from him tonight, Ken?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, it was, we've been talking a lot about the Jets team defense and everything else. This was even though they're not stylistically the same, this was a night where I think that Brossoit made a bunch of really good saves, especially while shorthanded. And otherwise, it was kind of big and boring for him because the Leafs were kept mostly to the outside at 5-on-5. But I still think this was a game where Brossoit was incredibly sharp and impressively sharp because he had almost no work in the first period. And yeah, he said, no problem, I've had this before. But Sean, the guy hasn't played since January 11th, barely sees a shot. Then he's got 11 in the second and 13 in the third. So I'm impressed by Brossoit, and I suggested this to Kipper and Borney earlier on Sportsnet this afternoon, helping to tee up the game. I mean, if you're Brad Treliving, are you not looking at Laurent Brossoit and say, hey, you know who would be a good 1A, 1B tandem with Joseph Woll next year? How about the guy that raised the cup last year in a complimentary role, but was the starter for the first 2 rounds until he got hurt? And now, I get it. Samsonov goes out and pitches a shutout, fine. But based on what Samsonov has gone through this year, I think all 3 of us would agree that Brossoit might be a bit of a safer choice for a team that's trying to put up a banner for the first time since '67 and doesn't have a lot of money to spend because they're paying 4 forwards north of $10 million next year.
What'd you see, Hammy?
Much of what Kenny said. I mean, I saw a guy that hadn't played in a while face 6 shots in the first 25 minutes, and every single shot. Now, I didn't think he faced a lot of high danger stuff, particularly early on, but it was always kind of these snappy shots in front out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden it was Auston Matthews in front of the net, and it's just like he had to be sharp at that moment after not really, not having to be, all that attentive through at least for the first period. But I'm seeing a guy who's clearly just gained his confidence. This guy's grooving. He's obviously in a routine that keeps him sharp. He's a guy that you can, obviously haven't seen a better Jets tandem since they've been here. This is a legit, 1-2 goalie, unit here that you need in the playoffs, that you need to, you need down the stretch where you can't play Connor Hellebuck and you need a victory. I mean, Laurent Brossoit deserved a victory tonight. The unfortunate part for him is you can't win games if your team doesn't score a goal, and that was really the only unfortunate part to his performance tonight.
Yeah, you don't win games 0-0. What's that, Ken?
Sorry, just quickly for Julie Sue, I'd rather sign LB than trade him. That's great, and the Jets would love to sign him, but Julie, he wants to be a starting goalie. He doesn't want to play 20 games anymore, and he's kind of running out of opportunities to do so. That would be why I'm suggesting a place like Toronto or somewhere else where he can play more than 20 or 22 starts. That's why I see it that way. Of course, if the Jets could sign him.
Toronto?
I could.
I mean, I totally could see it, but I just fear that would ruin him. Like just that. I don't know. Those are pretty bright lights. I feel like better goalies have have gone and failed there. Like I
just don't think he'd get out of shape. I don't think it would bother him at all. I think he does a great job of reading or not reading and staying offline. I think that would help him. It would be perfect there for him.
And SK says, "Love Hammer." What Kenny said. You're fitting right in with the Kenny acolytes there tonight, bud. It's they're loving. They're loving it.
Hey, buddy, it's only because you need a pristine wake up. That's all.
Since I'm in, well, I've got the hat.
I know. That's why I said it.
I'll say this: since I've fully embraced the heel mode, I'm gonna just go down that road because I know this is going to drive people absolutely crazy. Love Brossois' game tonight. One of the things I really loved, he made a kick save where he didn't like the rebound. I don't know what's going on. That's for later in the show. He does a kick save and he kicks it out. Now there's no one there for it, so it doesn't cost him. But he doesn't like the rebound. It doesn't cost him at all. But he stands up and he kind of gives his head a little bit of a shake, and that's the level that he's on. Something that doesn't cost him one bit. He's upset with, because he knows that at some point, maybe in a certain situation, that would have cost him. This guy's not just searching to be good. He's searching for perfection, and he's getting darn close. And what it does is it takes me, and you missed it because you wouldn't have had the broadcast unless you were able to listen to the broadcast. We had a conversation in the first intermission about the most important person on the Winnipeg Jets team. And Elliott, of course, was going to go with Connor Hellebuyck. Sorry, the debate was who's more important to their team. Connor Hellebuyck for the Jets or Auston Matthews for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Jamal Mayers went with Auston, and he went with him because he'd said, and he kind of like poked fun at the two guys and said, on a night where the Jets outshoot their opposition 16-4, and their goalie doesn't look busy at all, how can you say that it's the goaltenders? What you're seeing from Laurent Brossois is exactly what you're seeing from Connor Hellebuyck. To that point, that was further hammered home later on in the broadcast by Craig Simpson. I'll pull up his numbers here because I know that you wanted to do this with Connor Hellebuyck a little while ago. So the last 7 starts for Laurent Brossois, he is .967 tonight, .952 the game before that, .974 the game before that, .923 the game before that, .929, .938, and .977. What we're seeing is as Connor Hellebuyck's numbers have gone up, so too have Laurent Brossois' numbers gone up. If you want to make the argument that these two players are essentially the same players, what we're looking at right now is they each have almost identical save percentages. Laurent Brossois at .926, Connor Hellebuyck at .925, and Laurent Brossois' goals against average is actually better at .207 compared to .217. Now, clearly, Connor Hellebuyck plays more. There's more of a load to be handled here. I think there would be an argument from Laurent Brossois that, hey, then give me more of the load and I'll show you I can handle it. But to me, all these people who get so triggered by me suggesting that the Winnipeg Jets team and their structure is their superpower and it allows goaltenders to look good in it. I've been saying this for a long time, that basically this team looks the same with either goaltender and net. The numbers just keep backing that up and backing it up and backing it up.
Agreed. Done? I think it's, but to that point, I think it just adds, the play in front is significantly better. It's, that's why Connor Hellebuyck is well on his way to winning another Vezina trophy. He's playing within a system that benefits him for the first time in years. And I think it's if you look at Laurent Brossois, though, it's the fact that he doesn't play every single night, the fact that he has to come in there and just be sharp while he's doing it. It's just a lot to ask. And I don't think it's so much an ego thing. Like, I don't think he should have necessarily got a better opportunity than he's getting right now in Winnipeg because of what he did in the playoffs last year. However, I think he's living up to those expectations, and there's no way that the Jets are going to, if he continues the way he's going, there's no way the Jets are going to be able to afford him next year. Ken, anything to say before we move on?
I mean, I think Laurent Brossois' counter would be his numbers were very similar when he was with Vegas, so he might say it's just as much to do with the goalie than the system. But I mean, he was very complimentary himself of the system and the way the guys play. For sure, I'm just saying. I mean, the Jets are. Sorry, I think the Jets are playing very well in front.
People heard the post game.
Yeah, of course, and of course he's going to say that, and he's right. But I don't think. No, exactly. But I also, I don't know. To me, Sean, not intentionally, but you're diminishing the strong. Whether it's not intentional, I know this, but the Jets have 2 excellent goalies, and it's not only system related. They're very talented, they're very driven, they're very technically sound. So again, and I'm not, I know you're not doing this, but some people are interpreting this as a knock on the goalies. I know it's not.
Sure they are. I know, and I get it, and I know you're saying it too, and it seems just crazy to me. It seems crazy that if anyone were to argue what the biggest change is with the Winnipeg Jets between this year and last or years past, it would be the system. And that's all I'm trying to suggest is the system has been beneficial. It seems to be a bad word when I bring it up. I'm okay with that. I'm okay if it triggers people. I don't know why it triggers people. I'm trying to give the Winnipeg Jets to do it. I'm trying to explain what it is that makes them special this year that hasn't sitting around first place. If people need to interpret that as me crapping all over their goaltenders because their team plays good in front, then that's what they're going to have.
Sorry, I'm just saying that we know what the Jets look like. Now, this year is the anomaly. I mean, yes, Eric Comrie had a good year as a backup, but the starting goaltending, when Connor Hellebuyck has not been here, was not nearly good enough. So I also think it's important that both Brossoit and Hellebuyck are having exceptional years. I just want to reiterate that. I know, like I said, you're not saying they're not, but I just think that this discussion, it turns into an argument, even though it's not really one. But I just think that I think that you also need to reiterate. You need to reiterate that those guys are actually playing great. They're not just playing average. And you couldn't just put an average goal. Sean, you can't just put an average goalie in. The Jets have not achieved Devils-style defense yet. They're improved. Yes.
I literally just said that Laurent Brossoit is at the stage of his game where he's not just looking for greatness. He's looking for perfection.
I'm just saying it's not just system related.
That I think their goalies are great. I've called Connor Hellebuyck the Marty Brodeur in the Devils system. I don't know how much more complimentary I could be. I don't know. Honestly, what do I need to do? Do I need to anoint that these guys are Norse gods at this stage for people to not be triggered by me suggesting that the Jets are a good defensive team? This is crazy to me. I can't believe the direction this is going. Anyway,
so how amazing of a situation are we in now that the arguments on this show are now arguing, no, it's the goaltending that's better. No,
for sure. It's so much about the team.
That's better.
You're totally right.
It's like instead of this team's garbage. Well, no, not quite. Not quite. I think
Hellebuyck erases all warts.
No, it's the system. No, it's the goalies. It's like, no, you know what? Screw both of you. It's the forwards are carrying this team. You know? Come on.
It's like the old Chunky Soup commercials from the 80s, and I've got the fork and Ken's got the spoon, and we just can't get on the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, you guys need to talk off screen for a bit. Is there
we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
You know what? I will say this. I heard your song again, Hammy, and it reminded me of the old days of throwing hand grenades into the conversation, and I've taken it pretty seriously here this time. Ken, I need you to give Sweet Lou a shout out here right now.
Sure. For folks who are looking for realty needs they'd like to have met as we flip the calendar to 2024, contact Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community. For all your housing needs that need to be met, go and see Lou and tell him Kenny and Renny sent you.
And Ken, just for the sake of our relationship and making up, I am going to suggest right now that you finish what you started and give me the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, and then we can move on from this.
Sure, and you know what else? You know what else? You know what else you should do? I think that hat that Rick gave you is a little bit too tight on your head today. Once I give you the Pristine wake-up, why don't you put your headband on so you can make a little more sense in the last half an hour here?
I'll do it. Give me the Pristine Roofing wake-up call.
Wake up.
What that means. It's time for you to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. You got to give him a call, 1-204-981-6289. He's the guy who will come down and tell you everything you need to do with your roofing, your siding, your exteriors, all those things. But you could also call Pristine Roofing directly at 1-204-237-7663. Give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, just like Kenny gave me the hardcore Pristine Roofing wake-up call for saying that Laurent Brossoit, for insulting him by saying he's moving on from excellence and trying to achieve perfection. Anyways, it's time. Let's hit it, everyone. Let's make this a Sean's Headband version of the Kenny and Renny Show. Let's do it. Ken, I'm going to start with you because you got a good one there. Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
Oh, exceptional diving play by Dylan Samberg. A backdoor feed is heading to Callie Yarncroke for a backdoor tap-in that would have opened the scoring in roughly 8 minutes or 7.5 minutes into the third. Just an exceptional under-the-radar type of play on a night where Samberg played north of 20 minutes after Josh Morrissey was held to just 7:17 before he had the lower body injury. Just an awesome play by Samberg and very impressive all around.
What do you got, Hammy?
I'm just pulling it up here. Where's this? I was just trying to look up ice time. I have the Winnipeg Jets, the other remaining 5 D-men that had things covered with the loss of Josh Morrissey from the lineup. 3 guys, I think, eclipsed 25 minutes. You had Nate Schmidt, I think, coming at the lowest at 18 something. So I thought when Josh Morrissey didn't come out for the second period, I thought this team was going to be in trouble. I thought this was going to be the turning point in the game, and it didn't prove to be. And I thought, all things considered, the defense really stepped up in a situation that wouldn't have been easy, especially with the momentum of putting pairs together and having pretty much throwing a wrench in all those. And and obviously Josh Morrissey eating up a lot of minutes. It's the other 5D that get the shutout for me in this one.
You know what the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game is? It's not a game that you win or lose, but because I'm still sore at Ken for giving me the wake up, I'm going to give Jeff Hamilton the victory on this night. That's a great one. Absolutely love it, Hammy. You nailed it. And like I'd said before, this is a scenario by which the Winnipeg Jets fall back on their system, and it allows them to survive losses like this. Although you go back to Mark Scheifele, and we got to have that conversation. Maybe we'll have it next game because I think we're running out of time. The idea of how, when we're talking about the lack of offense, what role Scheifele plays in that versus what it was like when losing Kyle Connor, but losing Josh Morrissey, if it's for an extended period of time, that's rough. That's really rough because the offense that he provides. And the other thing I think is the activation that he takes on in tight games like that. He's a real difference maker. Not having him on the ice tonight in the end, Auston Matthews is the difference maker in this game. Josh Morrissey's a difference maker at all times when he's out there in games like that. It hurts for the Jets to lose him. But I agree. Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. Ken, what do you got to say? And
just Josh in the first period was awesome before he got hurt. He was activating at the blue line, a couple spin moves, a hit on William Nylander. He almost took somebody's head off at the defensive blue line. I went out of my way to make sure when I was with Kipper and Bourne today that I mentioned he should be a guy who's garnering more consideration for the Norris. And then Josh went out and had a Norris type period before he got hurt. So I just thought he was awesome in the game before he left.
Okay, that's it for us. And on the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game, Kenny and Renny OGs. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? If you do, you need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Hey, Hammy, start with the keg save of the game. What do you got?
People are asking me to address, I see in the comments, it's a few things about asking me to address Sidney Crosby. I talked to Sidney. He's strongly considering the move. He'll address it. He said he'll address it when he gets to town in a bit. So we'll have to wait for that. Keg save of the game. Is there any other one than the 2-on-0 stoppage?
Wow.
That was I was listening to Illegal Curve and Drew Mandel was saying he was kind of flummoxed when it happened. Like, it was so weirdly developed that it was like the way they were kind of skating, it looked like they were in their own end at one point. And I was like, what happened here? And then I kind of was like, feel kind of dumb saying it, but I was just like, it kind of threw me off. And then for them to, I was thinking this, would you say it's harder to score on a 3-on-0 than a 2-on-0?
Yes.
I would say 2. I say 2-on-0 is the most advantageous position that you can be in. So for Samsonov to come up big in that, and I also heard this. I heard a Sammy chant that I thought was Renny on TV. I don't know. Maybe I was just thinking about being on the show. Clearly it was Sammy, and then to hear Laurent Brossoit answer to Kenny tonight about how big that save was as the opposing goalie, talk about how they got the crowd into it. That once that happened, you know, it was he knew they were in trouble, and he continued to shut out the rest of the ways. I don't know how else if there is another option with that.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely it. And I would say this. I know some people in the chat room are going nuts about kind of ripping the Jets on the play for the inability to score. I actually, there's tons of situations at all levels of hockey where it's an overpass that caught, and it's not a great sequence of saves. It's either you waited too long or you gave it too soon. I actually thought that Morgan Barron sold the shot and faked it perfectly, and Samsonov still pushed over and made the first save. And what's ridiculous is the second save was even better than the first save because he had to extend. No, the second save. I don't think so.
It felt like 4 shots to me.
Yeah, to me, I thought it was the first one was Lowry, and then it pushed across. It went to Barron, and he like stuck his leg out, and I think it made it look like a second save because he kind of he kicked forward after he stopped it. Mm-hmm. I didn't see a third shot there. Maybe I could have been wrong, but no, I just thought it was just absolutely exceptional.
It was just felt like the puck was in front of him forever, and no one had come back to play defense. That led ultimately to the benching of those top 3 on the power play. But man, what a crazy sequence that was.
And I'm with you. Like, you look up and you're kind of like, is it going to be offside? It's like an NFL game or a CFL game where you pick up the ball, but you're expecting the whistle to blow before you take it into the end zone. Like, these guys had a full 2-on-0 from the blue line in, and you're kind of like, how'd they get behind the defense? And then, like, why is there nobody there? Is he going to shoot? Yeah. Is he going to shoot? Is he going to pass? I actually thought he made a perfect pass. So
I thought it was a perfect sequence. That's the one you do. You fake the pass. You either shoot because you really want the goalie, or you don't shoot if you get passed to. You definitely pass back, and you might even go a third pass if you have to. But you minimum 2 passes.
Right, but they didn't overpass, and he didn't wait too long so that, you know, sometimes you get in too low and then you can't raise it. It wasn't like that. It was a good shot, or 2 good shots and 2 exceptional saves, and that's why it was my keg save of the game as well.
Personally, I love the pass across the crease. You got to drag it past for the backhand. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you fool them. You know, I don't know. That's the other option. But I mean,
give Samsonov credit. Like, he did the kind of big and boring thing in the net. He backed right back into the net to cover as much of it as he possibly could. He didn't commit to one or the other. He kind of just went and did like the big and boring, didn't move that much. And the pad save that he gets on the second opportunity is pretty good. I think if the puck is raised in that situation there, it's probably in the back of the net. But he looked calm.
I thought he did. He didn't raise it. I thought he needed to roof it, but I thought he raised it.
He raised it. He didn't raise it over the pad.
Yeah, right. Not enough to go over the pad.
Yeah, no doubt. Anyway, that's these guys, keg save of the game. I agree with them completely. I got the Christine Roofing wake-up call, and I'm going to agree with
now you're coming in line, hey? Now you're coming in line?
I agree with everything the chat room says, and that's why I agree with that, and that's the keg save of the game. But it doesn't matter what mine is, or if we agree, or Ken's or Jeff's. What matters is yours. Share with us your keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate to any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city. Each location finer than the last. And the winner, this is almost fitting, the winner came from the YouTube chat comments afterwards, and it's Johnny Sizzle, 9846. Johnny Sizzle can go get himself a sizzling steak at the keg if he wants. Hey, you can opt out for the chicken, but come on, don't shortchange yourself. Okay, go get yourself a nice sizzling steak, Johnny Sizzle, but you can only do it if you direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds and send me your full name, Mr. Sizzle, and an email, and I will have the keg send you a $50 gift certificate to be used at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city. Each location finer than the last. Finally, Ken, you go first. What is your lampy of the game?
Well, there's only one choice here, and it has to be Auston, but I should just say this as an honorable mention. I think one of the sneaky saves, I mean, the 2-0 is obvious that he had the 2 kicks there, but The save that Samsonov makes with his left shoulder on Ehlers on the toe drag in overtime was absolutely top shelf as well, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle because of the highlight reel marker. But I mean, the Jets had their chances in overtime, but they kind of got discombobulated. Ehlers makes a great crazy play where he's out of position and knocks the puck away but loses his stick, and then it looked like he went at the perfect time, and then all of a sudden the Jets left the leading goal scorer in the league open in front of the net, and Morgan Riley finds him with a great play, and that's the end of the game. It's funny, Brossoit, I mean, you guys saw it. Brossoit thought he actually whiffed on it, or he like tipped it and then hit his shin pad or something, but he needed to see it on the replay. But regardless, in a night that they kept Auston Matthews under wraps, you can't leave him open in front of the net in that situation. So, and I loved Rick Bonus's answer. No, we lost him in coverage. You can't let that guy beat you in that scenario. So I loved everything about it in terms of the response by all parties. But I mean, that's a breakdown that was costly in this game.
I chuckled at that one with Rick Bonus too when he was like, just lost coverage. It was just like, you lost coverage on a guy with 38 goals. Like it's not, it's not what you want to be doing, right? Or a guy can score. It's interesting. It's I look at a guy. Obviously, it's that one goal, but since we're reliving chances a little bit, Nemestikov firing one across the crease to Ehlers, like early in the first period, thought that one could have been good. And Mason Appleton, man, like I thought maybe he could continue that momentum. Like he started that puck movement in the system. I thought it worked. They worked the puck well. He worked worked himself into the slot. That's got to be on net, man. And maybe we'll be talking about those lamplighters if they had some finish.
No doubt. Hey, I'm going to agree, not because it's the only choice of the game, the lamplighter, because I know that I've upset a lot of people in the chat room tonight. I'm deeply, deeply sorry for having done so, and this is my way of making it up to you, getting back on board with you, and agreeing with your takes. So I too agree with everything that you said as far as the TCB lamplighter of the game. It doesn't matter what I think; it matters what you think. Share with us your lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win it. Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at Transcanada Brewing Company. If you cannot wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your own Frosty Delicious 8-pack, you can head on down to Transcanada Brewing Company and join them in their completely awesome tap room, one of my funnest places to be. Pat Canuga, who I've talked about on the show before, had his retirement party. Amy, you were there. Kenny, you were there. Renny was there too. It was an absolutely great time.
Tremendous.
This is great. If you didn't see the last show and the live event that we had, it was phenomenal. The food was great. Renny even got out and served the pizza. I was like, I've never done that before. I walked around the room, served the pizza. I thought the hot pizzas were as close as I was getting to a hot take on those nights. So I made sure I went out and took care of business there.
Yeah, you got a tough guy to track down that night. You were popular that night.
I was going. Anyways, we're going to be doing it all over again. February 19th is our next Kenny and Renny live show. We will get you the link when it is time. We'll get to that soon. But boy, oh boy, if you talk to any of the people who were at that last show, I thought it was just great. We are talking and pitching at one of the shows last year. We ended the show. It was an afternoon game, and we had a bit of a round table afterwards where it was like is that King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table? Am I getting that right? Did I get that right? And we kind of just sat down and talked for hours.
We just have to agree with each other.
Exactly. Everyone just has to get on the same page and not differentiate and all think the same things, and then no one gets hurt or upset. But that's what we'll do. Litigator says we agree, but we agree to argue. I love it. Good stuff. Anyways, so it's going to be a fun event where we really get to dig in and have some conversations with you after. Ken has always said that this show is supposed to feel like you're out at the bar talking hockey, pull up a chair at the wood and have that conversation along with us. That's why we try and bring the chat room into it. But literally, that's what that night will be, is all of us just sitting around talking hockey after the game, after we feast on pizza and appetizers and great salads and all that stuff, and watch a live show where Kenny will be at this one. So we're looking forward to that one. It's going to be great. Before we do wrap all this, and I got to name our lamplighter winner. That would be Savage 09100, Savage 09100. You have won yourself a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at Transcanada Brewing Company. But first, you got to direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Give me your full name, give me your email address, and I will send you a voucher for your very own Frosty Delicious 8-pack Lamplighter Amber Ale, the nectar of the gods. Before we go, massive news today in the announcement that the London police have asked 5 members of the 2018 Canadian junior team to come and surrender to police. We're not going to get to the names of any of the people or any of the speculation. That's not our job. Those names haven't been confirmed. We're not getting into the speculation, but we should kind of talk about this situation and how it unfolded. The news comes out very similar timing was the news that the Utah Jazz owner has inquired about the possibility of an expansion team in Utah. Wasn't a good look. Hammy, take it away. What did you see today in this? Is this a situation that could have been handled better?
Oh, yeah. I mean, where to start? You talk about speculation because that's what good PR is, right? It creates plausible deniability that tries not to leave tracks on what your intent was. But it's hard to see a Globe and Mail report come out, reporting exactly what you just said about the news that after years since the incident happened, but really since we've heard much about this incident, that we now have 5 players that have been not publicly identified, but identified by police that now have to come and surrender. And for minutes later to have, it wasn't one person, it wasn't one person from one outlet that got this Utah scoop, if you will. It was 3 people, and they're known insiders. And just to have that come out 4 or 5 minutes later, I mean, the league can say that it was, of course they're going to say it wasn't on purpose, that there's reports about saying they knew about it a week ago, that this was always going to be a planned timing. Well, it's not far off for pro teams, and certainly would not put it past the National Hockey League to do this. I mean, I've seen I've been in those press conferences with Gary Bettman. Gary Bettman is a lawyer by trade and a lawyer by morals. I mean, he's a guy that fights back to these things. And I think that this, while we don't have proof that the NHL got these guys to share it, it looks pretty awful that you have arguably the biggest story in hockey come out for some time, and then shortly after they're talking about NHL expansion. It's like, that's, as if they thought that would overshadow what was previously reported. It's a bad look. And I mean, there's lots to talk about this. I mean, this reintroduces the opportunity to talk about what an insider's job is. And I got some feedback, people asking me about my tweet today about my PSA, saying that insiders are not the people, NHL insiders are not the people to go to for NHL related scandals. And was it snarky a bit? Sure, but it was factual. I got nothing against these guys. I just think the expectation should be 0. I mean, the expectations for insiders are to, broker relationships within the National Hockey League and leverage information, and they get paid handsomely to do it, and they're good at it. So, it's interesting to me that, when stuff like this comes out, and, it's the Globe and Mail, a newspaper that practices strong journalism, comes out and breaks the story, everyone's, kind of going after these guys. In some ways, I'm not necessarily defending them. It's just they're not going to be the ones that you lean on for your journalism. And so to feel upset or disappointed, that's fair. I think that those feelings are warranted, because the reality is nobody has better connections than the insiders to people inside the National Hockey League, and nobody has an easier gateway to answers than these guys. That's just not what they do. And and I think when you look at the report from the Globe and Mail and then follow it and see the report about Utah, it's hard not to connect the two as being an effort to overshadow what is and will continue to be a very serious story for weeks and months to come here.
Yeah, I would just say too, and I mean, there's a reason why people like Katie Strang are dedicated to covering these types of things full time. Because it's a full-time effort. Same with Robin at the Globe and Mail. I mean,
100%.
And again, I'm not defending or ripping people either, but I mean, Elliot came to the morning. A lot of people who are in roles where they're covering the league on a national level either skipped the skate or came to the skate late because they were chasing information on this story and were trying to work on it. I mean, I was sitting with Elliot for 5-10 minutes during the skate today, and of course he put that information out because it's out there, but he wasn't trying to talk to Ryan Smith. He was trying to find out more about the story that was unfolding in front of us. So and again, I didn't hear his hit with Jeff Merrick, but I know Elliot has spoken out about this issue before, and again, I just think it's important, and I know you're not doing this, Jeff, but I don't think it's fair to paint every person with the same brush in this scenario, and some of those insider people are certainly not in the habit of sharing when it comes to sensitive information when it comes to their clients. So that's not to say the information is not available elsewhere, but I don't know. There's definitely a little bit of gray in the entire situation, but at the same time, the story today is that the 5 players, and eventually there needs to be justice. And the other thing too, like with the law element, like fans want to say, name the players, attack the players. Well, there's a thing called libel, and you better be 100% sure these players' names are going to be coming out once the charges are laid, and once the judicial process is going to be happening. So again, people who think that we're withholding information, we know the names. Well, we don't know the names. You're starting to connect the dots, but if you connect the wrong dots, you're out of work. So that's not the job of a journalist. Now, you need to dig on this for sure, but people saying that people are withholding information and that they should be naming names and attacking people, like those people will have their time. They'll have their time in court, and if they are charged, they will have the penalty.
Well, and this is exactly, I'm glad you brought that up.
And sorry, one last thing, just to tie this into, and I understand people being mad at journalists. Like, this is an issue for me. What bothers me is that the victim is who we should be thinking about, and the people that end up getting charged or whatever, or convicted, like the venom should be going out to the attackers and the assailants, not who's doing what. It's easy to point a finger and say someone's not doing their job properly. I just think that we're moving in the wrong direction. The acts that have been alleged are horrendous, and if the charges happen and the convictions happen, those people will be publicly shamed or whatever you want to say. But it's just something that I think sometimes things need to unfold a little bit further here as well. So
but you know what, sorry, Sean, not that I disagree, Kenny, but I'm not buying that Elliot Friedman's working the phones all day trying to get more information on this case, because what more information needs to be done? You're not naming names, and the media literacy part I'm talking about is I'm comparing, a Sportsnet or a TSN versus a Globe and Mail. Like, the Globe and Mail is the reporters, the Robin Doolittles, the Katie Schwang, they're empowered by their employer to look at these things. Sportsnet doesn't empower their employees to look at bad parts of the, like, if you look at the Kyle Beach stuff and you compare it to TSN that isn't a national broadcaster, the coverage is very obvious. One has a license to go after the NHL because they have less to lose, and one doesn't because they're a partnership with the National Hockey League. Sportsnet is, I'm not saying that everyone who works under the Sportsnet umbrella is a water carrier, non-journalist, but what I am saying is that Sportsnet has a relationship with the National Hockey League and has editorial influence on what they produce. That's a fact. And they can't just go out and put on, I don't really buy that part of it. So and you do need people that are grinding and doing those things. And that's all I'm saying, is that there's a lot of outrage towards these people. And it's just a reminder that these people aren't in a place to necessarily provide the answers you're looking for. And that's why it's important to have publications and, straight up newspapers that are independent from the leagues that they cover and are empowered by their employers to look behind the dark shadows of these things. That's all I'm saying. I
mean, Elliot was pretty outspoken on the Kyle Beach stuff, Jeff. So I mean, that would be my pushback on that front. I mean, whether it was on radio with Jeff or in some of the columns that he wrote and in his hits. So
or in the conversations I've had with him.
For sure, right.
I'm not I like Elliot Friedman.
No, I know.
There was restrictions on his job with the Kyle Beach stuff where it was almost like TSN. It was TSN's scoop. You know what I mean? And it was very clear. And I'm not saying that Elliot was ignoring it or didn't talk about it. I'm just saying there's certain things within media landscape that everyone gets painted with the same brush. There's different relationships. There's different jobs. And it's just when these things happen and people look at the Elliot Friedmans and the Darren Dragers and the Pierre LeBruns as like the top end journalists, they're insiders. And insiders and journalists, this is no disrespect to them, to me are different things. And that's just my take on it.
I'll just add my voice to this. You guys can respond. What happened to this young woman is what's being alleged to have happened. Is despicable. As someone touched on it, if you had daughters, I have 2 daughters. We've talked about this before. I think what we've tried to do on this show, and I believe we had these conversations around the time the Kyle Beach stuff was happening. Ken, I know you and I had to go on Sportsnet at the time and have these conversations. I remember being outside the NHL offices when this was happening and saying a lot of stuff there that a lot of people thought. I remember someone telling me that, and sorry, this is by no means to pat myself on the back. I'm trying to get to a point. Someone had described me and the things that I was saying on air as being courageous for exactly what you're talking about, Jeff, because I was being vocal about these kind of problems. And I think that, there is some pressures within the industry where you're covering this, that you don't go hard at the people that you are partners with. What happened to this girl was absolutely despicable. The fact that Hockey Canada did the reckoning that it's happening for what it did was beyond despicable, to use power and resources to try and buy this. The NHL, after that happened, after what we know, after the changes that they've tried to do, the NHL needed to get this right. Throughout this entire situation. And yes, they should hold off. A lot of people are saying, go with the names and all that kind of stuff. Listen, the names are February 5th is going to be the time. Don't be trying to rush this out of the gate and blow things up. Like this is happening. These people will be named at that time. It's a conversation that can have then. But today, the whole thing happening with Utah and everything like that, it was either purposeful, and it sure looks that way, which is despicable. If there was an attempt to try and bury this in the news cycle, that's despicable. And it's unbelievable. And if it was a pure accident that this happened, then someone at the PR arm of the NHL is probably in a lot of hot water right now, because I don't think, and it was said earlier on, let me see if I can find the comment. Spency says, laugh out loud, imagine trying to use the state of Utah of all possible options as a way to distract hockey fans. This was never going to happen. So if this was the issue, and this was the NHL trying to take some of the heat off this, I think they created a swirling vortex of slime in the middle of the ocean and went right down to the bottom. And the issue, as Ken is talking about, as insiders have to talk about the news, I think it dragged the insiders down with it, because it made them look like they were trying to minimize the situation. I think the important thing to happen in that situation, I would think, is at some point I would have liked to have heard somebody say, listen, it's my job to talk about this. There's news about about Utah, but let me just make this right and clear. I'm going to talk about this, but this pales in comparison to the news of the day and where our focus should be. And it should be with the young alleged victim of this situation and the culture that needs to change should this play out in court the way people think it's going to play out. Any attention that was attempted to be taken away from this situation was wrong, and it was despicable. That cannot happen, and it was a failure in a lot of levels. Anything you guys got to say before we go?
No, good. Yep.
All right.
And just done. For context, Ryan Smith's interest is not new, right? Elliot and Jeff had him on 32 Thoughts in the Summertime, so
exactly.
It's hard to interpret this any other way.
Yeah, no doubt. Anyway, that's it for us. I appreciate people sticking around with a little bit extra. We always want to make sure that we, with tact and with professionalism, go head on against, some of the big issues that happen in the game. I know that that's one of the reasons Jeff is here, because Jeff handles this stuff. And if you haven't taken a lot of the investigative journalism that he's talking about, which I couldn't agree with him more, Katie Strang and Rick Westhead, is so important to happen. Anyone out there who's like trying to beat down on the media and talk about the lack of importance for the media, and anyone who's trying to like talk about the situation, them controlling the message, the only reason you know about this, the only reason this is uncovered is because of the media. So I've said this before, the media doesn't always get it wrong, but boy, there's some pretty important things that they uncover, and Jeff did a lot of that with the Graham James situation. If you haven't read his work on that, go back and read it. Phenomenal stuff. Ken, you got something to say?
Yeah, the investment in journalism, like that's when you have the resources to dedicate people to this. That's why, I don't want to get into another debate here, but that's why there's paywalls. That's why people are asked to pay for quality journalism, because you can have someone who's dedicated to uncovering these types of stories.
No doubt. Well said. Okay, that's it for us. We hope we covered that. Probably not the last time we talk about this. More news will be coming out on this. We promise to always try and tackle, like I said, with professionalism and tact and honesty. We like to try and tackle these kind of issues because we know they're important to you. So thank you for tuning in and listening to our thoughts on this. Jeff, thank you for your contributions to this. Kenny, the chat room was really happy with you tonight. I think they thought you knocked it out of the park. I agree with them. You did a great job here tonight. Chat room on fire, as always. We completely agree with everything you think, I think. Let's get on the same page. I love it. I do want to say something I think we can all get on the same page on is, hey, if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, please appreciate contributions by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. First, that's Vittorio Rossi, Kane Green Credit Union, Christian Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnston Group, the Keg, and Trans-Canada Brewing Company. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We appreciate you sticking around a little bit late, and we'll do this all one last time before the break as the Winnipeg Jets welcome the back end of a home and home with Toronto Maple Leafs looking for a measure of revenge. We will chat with you after that. Talk to you later.